Hello network engineers, welcome back to this module number 3 of the Huawei Competition Regional Final 2021-2022. Here we are going to tackle WLAN configurations. So if you are meeting this video for the first time, remember there are previous modules, that is module 1 and module 2. Please check in the video description, you will find the link for module 1 and module 2. I will attach them under the description section. So on this lab, we are just going to see how you can configure WLAN. But here you need to be very careful on this WLAN because it is so different from the one that you have configured on previous labs. Here, this lab provided some information that are confusing, so you need to pay so much attention on this lab. So let's check the lab requirement. So configure WLAN. Step 1, configure IP addresses for VLAN 103 on AC1 and AC2, the management interface of the two ACs, according to the data plan for the table 3.2. So the AC communicates with each other. Step number 2, configure basic WLAN services to ensure that STA can successfully obtain an IP address. Remember to note this, can successfully obtain an IP address and access the internet. That is, it can ping 1.1.1. 1.1 is the IP address of the router on the ISP. Step number 3, configure VRRP to implement hot standby for ACs. If AC1 fails, AC2 takes over services from AC1 to ensure service continuity. The VRRP group is 1, interface IP address is 10.10.102.2 and 10.10.11.103.3. So that is those are the IP addresses for the VLAN 103, and the virtual IP will be 10.103.1. Configure related devices to implement layer 2 roaming for STA in the WLAN coverage area. So if you scroll down, you can see the table that they were referring to. So the management VLAN is VLAN 101, service VLAN is VLAN 102. Here, the DHCP server switch 1 function as the DHCP server. That one we have done on our module number 1. But there's an improvement that we're going to make on this our DHCP server, because from the IP pool here for APs, it ranges from 4.4 to 254, that is 192.168.101.4 all the way to 192.168.101.254. So meaning that we are going to exclude IP address from .2 to .3. Also the same for the STA, we are going to exclude IP address from .1 to .3. So as we proceed now, I see couple of source is 10.11.103.1, that is the virtual IP. The management for AC1 is .2, 10.11.103.2, and for AC2 is .3. Also here, this is the new concept that you have not seen in the previous lab that I've prepared on WLAN. Here where you have been given a port number, so we will need to configure HSB to enable configure the master and the backup. Then these service parameters are just the normal that we have been configuring. Before we proceed, there is a place where there is confusion. Like when you look from this our lab, this interface that connects from switch number 3 to AP1, it should be configured as an access port, not a trunk port. But from the lab, I will find that they told you that that interface will be trunk. That is switch number 3. From switch number 3, you can see it was gig 0/0/3, and they told you to be a trunk. It should not be a trunk. That one will be a terminal, because connect to AP, it will now be configured as an access port. If you configure it as a trunk port, the CAPWAP source won't be able to be established successfully. So those are the corrections that we need to make on this our lab. As we proceed, we will still need to see some correction. So what is most important is, if you understand this concept, even identify when there's a problem will be so easy, so that you can now troubleshoot it very quick and make sure your lab is running correctly. So let's first of all establish a layer 2 that is configuring the interfaces to forward VLAN if 102 to 103. So on our SE1, let's give it a name. So sysname here will be SE1. Create a VLAN batch 101 all the way to 103. Then enter interface gig 0/0/1 port link type. This one will be a trunk port. Then delete port trunk, allow pass VLAN 101 to 103. After that, let's configure VLAN if 103 and assign the IP addresses. So interface VLAN if 103 IP address here will be 10.11.103.2/24. Let's enter our switch, and because we said now switch function as the DHCP server, and let's see the DHCP server that was set. So IP pool IP display this. You can see the DHCP is set. Now we are going to exclude the IP addresses. So exclude IP addresses of 192.168.101.2 to 192.168.101.3. Then enter for the SAP, enter the pool for the STA, that was PC underscore STA. Display this. Then exclude IP address of 192.168.102.2 to 192.168.102.3. Quit, and now let's see the VLAN if interfaces. So interface VLAN if 101, display this. VLAN if 101 has this IP address. We want to ensure that now this switch 1 can communicate with AC1 here. We're going to configure also VLAN if 101 on this our AC1. That one you are not told in that practical, but because how you understand the topology and how you know how the interface should work, we'll implement that. So we quit and improvise that. So interface VLAN if 101. Let's give the IP address here. It will be .2. So IP address of 192.168.101.2/24. Enter. Now let's see if you can ping now or the address on switch 1, 192.168.101.1. It can reach that interface. After we enable now that interface to be up, now the next thing now we are going to do now is now configuring the VRRP. And they said VRRP is configured on the VLAN if 103 interface, because 103 interface are where we establish these IP addresses. So we are going to establish a VRRP. Before we do that, we come also to AC number 2 and do those layer 2 configuration. So let's give it a name. This one will be AC2. VLAN batch here will be 102 to 103, and give it interface agig 0/0/1 port link type trunk, then port trunk, allow pass VLAN 101 all the way to VLAN 103. Quit and create interface VLAN if 103. IP address 10.11.103.3/24 and ping IP address for AC1.10.11.103.2. It's able to reach AC1 here. Let's come back to AC1 now and configure the VRRP. So they said VRID was 1, so interface VLAN if 103, VRRP VRID of 1, virtual IP here will be 10.11.103.2. 11.103.1. Then here we'll set the priority to 120 for it to be the master. So VRRP VRID 1 priority here will be 120. Then set the preemption timer to 1800. So VRRP VRID 1 preempt mode timer here will be less question. Now delay. The integer will range from 0 to 3600, and so where 0 is the default, so we give it 1800. Now we are going to set the interval at which master in the VRRP group sends VRRP packets. So tell it admin VRRP VRID 1, then VRRP VRID 1 timer advertise 2. So it will send the packets, the master will send the packets after every 2 seconds. Quit that, and now we are going to do that on SC number 2. So on that VLAN if 103, we get VRRP VRID of 1, virtual IP of 10.11.103.1. Then on that you tell it admin VRID of 1, then you tell it to advertise after every 2 seconds. So VRRP VRID 1 timer advertise 2. Then let's see if the VRRP is up. So display VRRP. So you can see the state here. Now it's the master. The master IP address is 10.11.103.2. Priority has been given to 120. Timer delay has been set to 18 seconds. Timer runs for 2 seconds. As you can see here, the config type is admin VRRP. And let's come to SE2 and see if it has been enabled as the backup. Display VRRP. You can see the state is backup. Its virtual IP is this now, and its physical IP address for the master also you've been given to be 10.11.103.2. So meaning that VRRP is complete. Now we shall create HSB service 0 on SU1, proceed and configure the IP addresses and the port numbers for the active and the standby channels, and set the retransmission times and the interval for the HSB packets. So that is where they gave you these ports here. So this one are for to guide you that you should configure an HSB port and give those port numbers. So we come here. The first thing you do when you are configuring HSB service, so first of all, you configure HSB service 0. On HSB service 0, we are going to configure the port. So service port local IP address here will be IP address of SE1, so 10.11.103.2. Here IP address will be for SE2, that is 10.11.103.3. Then local port here, they said you should use a port of 10.241. Then peer port should also be the same, 10.241. Then ensure that you set up the retransmission times and the interval for the HSB packets. So that is service keep alive here. We detect the retransmission time to be 3 seconds, and the interval here will be 6 seconds. Display this. You can see those configuration. Quit now and configure. We are going now to configure the HSB group on SE1 and bind the HSB group to HSB service 0 that we created, and also the management VRRP that we created earlier. That is the VRRP group that we configured, VRRP group number 1. So HSB group 0 bind service 0. and here we are going to track VRRP VRID1 interface VLAN if 103. After we are done with binding the HSB service and the VRRP to the VRRP group, the next thing we do is now bind the NAC service to the HSB group. So quit and tell it HSB service type here, access user HSB group 0. And also we need to bind the WLAN service to the HSB group. So HSB service type here, AP for the WLAN, then tell it HSB group 0. Then lastly, bind the DHCP service to the HSB group. So HSB service type here, DHCP. Now HSB group will be group 0. Then enter into the HSB view and enable HSB group 0. Then tell it HSB enable. You do the same on this SC number 2. Quit and now create HSB service 0. Here, service port, the local IP address will be 10.11.103.3. That is for IP address for AC number 2. Then peer will be for AC number 1. That is 10.11.103.2. Then local port here will be 10.241. Peer port 10.241. Quit, and before you quit, we are going to set the retransmission time. That is the service keep and the interval service keep alive. Detect retransmission time here will be 3 seconds, then interval will be 6 seconds. Quit and now create the HSB group. So HSB group here 0. On the HSB group, we are going to bind the service, HSB service. So HSB bind HSB service 0. Then also we are going to bind the VRRP. So track VRRP VRID of 1 interface VLAN if 103. Quit and now bind the NAC. So HSB service type here will be access user HSB group 0. Then bind the WLAN to the HSB group. So HSB service type AP here, HSB group 0. Then bind the DHCP to the HSB group. So HSB service type here, DHCP, and bind the HSB group 0. After that, now enable HSB on the HSB group. So enter HSB group V 0 and enable HSB enable. So let's see now if those two have been connected, and so display HSB service 0. Here the local IP address is 10 is that one, and the peer IP address, the source port is this one, destination port is this one. Keep alive retransmission time is 3 seconds and the interval is 6 seconds, and the service state is now here is connected, so meaning that we have connected AC1 to AC2. So in case AC1 goes down, AC3 will detect that AC1 is down and it will be activated into the active role, that is the master role. So also let's display HSB service 0. So display HSB group 0. When you display HSB group 0 here, VRID group is this one. The VRRP interface is 103. VLAN if 103. VRRP group status is master, and the group status is active. This one is the device name and the device software version. Access users that we bound to that group, and the AP and the DHCP are those one as you can see them there. So meaning that now we have completed some steps here. So we have configured step number 3, that is VRRP to implement standby on if AC1 fails, and also we have configured step number 1. Step number 2, configure basic WLAN services so that STA can successfully obtain IP addresses. And then step number 4 will be configure related devices to implement layer 2 roaming. Those are now the steps that remain. So we are now going to import AP online. So let's start these devices. As we wait those devices to start, let's now see the table again. First of all, AAC CapWap source interface will be this one. That's the first thing we are going to do. Then you have been given here AP group. Here is Huawei. Regulatory domain name is Huawei. VRRP is Huawei. SSID name is Huawei. SSD profile name is Huawei. Then password you have been given to be Huawei at 123. SSID name here will be Huawei ICT. So those are the service requirements that you are required to configure on that AC. So first, as always, you know how you copy your MAC address. You come to settings, come to view, config mode. Now this one is the MAC address that you'll have to pick. So we already picked it and grouped it into a group of 4. Copy its MAC address, Control C. Then come to our SE1 here. We're going to set the CapWap source here. So CapWap source IP address will be 10.11.103.1. After you configure the CapWap source, now we are going to enter into the WLAN view and the import AP online. So also on SC number 2, let's configure the CapWap source. So CapWap source interface source IP address here will be 10.11.103.1. Then come to SC1 now and import the AP online. Already we have copied the MAC address. That is the MAC address for the AP1. Then enter the WLAN view. So WLAN configure AP group name here was Huawei. Quit and configure regulatory domain. Regulatory domain name here is also Huawei. Country code here we'll use China CN. Then quit. Enter back to AP group view and bind the regulatory domain into that AP group, that is regulatory domain Huawei. Regulatory domain Huawei, say yes. Quit and now enter MAC authentication. So AP authentication mode here will be MAC authentication. Then AP MAC, paste the MAC address. After that, give it AP name. AP name here will be AP1. Then bind it to the AP group. So AP group here is Huawei. Say yes. Quit and import AP2 online. So let's copy its MAC address. Control C. Come back and configure that. So enter AP authentication mode here will be MAC authentication. Then AP MAC here we paste the MAC address for AP number 2. AP name was AP2. Then bind it to the AP group. AP group is Huawei. Say yes. Now let's see if you can find those AP. So display AP all. it has found those AP and the state is normal. You can see the state is normal here, and they have obtained an IP address of 192.168.101.254, and also the second API has obtained an IP address of .252, meaning that now our AC is able to link with our AP1. After you see that the status is normal, now you can proceed to configure the WLAN service parameters. So let's see how the lab suggests. So from this lab here, the VRRP, when configuring VRRP profile, they have told you to use direct forwarding mode, which I think it's not correct. That one will give you some problems, because they also told you that you should ensure that the AP, the STS here, ensure that STS successfully obtain IP address. But when you configure that one as the direct forwarding mode, STA will connect, but they won't be able to obtain an IP address. So it's good to understand the difference between the tunnel forwarding mode and the direct forwarding mode. In tunnel forwarding mode, APs encapsulate the user data packet over the CAPWAP data tunnel and sends them to the AC. Then the AC forwards these packets to the upper network layer. While for direct forwarding, APs forward user data packets to upper layer network without encapsulating them over the CAPWAP data tunnel. So like for instance, in our diagram here, if we configure it in a tunnel mode, the AP here will now forward the data packets with the control packets through the AC, then forward them to the upper layer network, while for direct forwarding mode, the AP will just forward the data packet. The data packet here is the service packet, will just forward it direct to the upper layer without going through the AC, which is not correct. But always it's good to do as the lab requires. But now that one, you will find that now it won't work as it should work. But I will demonstrate for you so that you can see that. So first of all, let's configure the security profile. Quit. Before we proceed with that, let's remove this our boundary here so that we'll be able to see those circles. Enter security profile name here is Huawei. Then security WPA2. PSK passphrase here was Huawei shift at 123. EAS. Quit and create the SSID profile name Huawei. SSD name here will be Huawei ICT as the practical says. Quit and now create the VRRP profile name to be Huawei. We're going to bind the service parameters before we bind the SSD and SID and security. Before we bind the SSID and the security profile, let's configure first of all the forwarding mode. So forwarding mode, as per the practical, then I will implement the concept that you are supposed to work out in this. This lab requires you to think outside the box, because now some concept, if you just do them directly, you find that you are automatically out. So let's first of all use the direct forwarding mode that they said. Then service VLAN here, VLAN was VLAN number 2, VLAN ID 102. Then bind the SSID. SSID name here is Huawei. Security profile name Huawei. Quit and enter the AP group view. AP group name Huawei. And we are going to bind the VRRP profile into our AP group. So VRRP1, VRRP profile name was Huawei. WLAN1 radio 0. The first circle should be up. So because the interface keys keep going on and off, that's why you see now the circle is not yet up. But it has come now. Let's configure for radio number number 1 has also come up, but AP1 is still not on. So this quit, display AP all, AP1 should also be on. But now let's now try to connect our AP and see if it can obtain an IP address. Huawei at 123. It is obtaining. It will remain in obtaining state. You see here, it's obtaining IP address. And if you come here and try to see IP config, you can see it doesn't have an IP address. But when you come to this view, it is telling you it's still obtaining IP address. So that's because we configured it as a direct forwarding mode, meaning that the service packet will now just go through the upper layer without going through the SC. But in this lab, you need to now configure SC to work in tunneling mode. So first of all, let's reset our AP. So AP reset all. AP reset all so that all of them go online. So yes. As we wait them to reset now, we are going back to our VRRP profile. So VRRP profile name was Huawei. We are going to change the forwarding mode. So display this and configure the tunnel forwarding mode. Forwarding mode tunnel. It is asking you the action may cause service interruption. Say yes, and quit. And now reset AP again. AP reset all. Say yes. You can see here the success count. 2 are false. AP is idle. So display AP all. It is false, meaning that it is still finding the DHCP. In few minutes, the interface will be up and it will be normal state. So you can now see all the AP now have turned online, and now this our STA has been connected to our network, and it has been connected. You see now, because we configured it as a tunnel mode. Now let's see if it can obtain an IP address. Its IP address will be 192.168.102.254. Then let's bring another device here, start it and let it join the network. Connect it to channel number 2, tell it Huawei shift cut 123. It's obtaining an IP address. It is now connected, as you can see here. The state is connected. Come on, let's see the IP address it will obtain. So IP config doesn't obtain an IP address of .253. So it's good now that we have understand the service requirement and the tunnel mode and the forwarding mode. So under which circumstances when you configure how your lab will work. Then last step, that is step number 4, configure related devices to implement layer 2 roaming for the STA in the WLAN coverage. Meaning that if a person moves from the AP1 and wants to relocate to AP number 2, it should now be able to sign into that network without any problem. So we are going to configure now WLAN roaming, layer 2 roaming. Because here we have established CAPWAP through a virtual interface. When you add member CAPWAP source addresses, we'll just add one. Suppose we were using the VLAN interface for different interfaces, we'll have add all the member interface into the member group. So come to your SC1, So to enable WLAN roaming, you're going to configure mobility group, give it a name of mobility. Then we are going to add the member IP address will be for the port source for AP1 and AP2, that is 10.11.103.1. Do the same to SC number 2. Enter the WLAN view. On the WLAN view, we are going to add member mobility group here, name mobility. Member IP address here will be 10.11.103.1. Our circle for the AP has gone off because now the interface keep on buffering, it keep on going on and off. So I think we are done with our WLAN configuration. We have implemented every step that they require us to. All this step has been configured. Now STAs are now able to successfully obtain an IP address. That is, it should be able to ping 1.1.1. That is the address, the loopback address for the router on the internet. That is this router number 1 here. After this STAs obtain an IP address, they should be able to configure this one. So in our next lab, we are going to configure our ISP, so that ISP and also with our branch, so that now STAs and PC on this side will be able to reach our router number 1. All these firewalls, we will start them and see if the ping service will be able to go through. In case there's something you don't understand, please alias in the comment section and I will be able to respond to you as quick as possible. So thank you. If you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe to support my content, and stick around for more labs coming on the way. So bye for now.